Hi, I'm Kaz.
Yes,
Welcome to Peculiar Podcasts.
we're peculiar people.
Okay, so today we're talking about our very first game that we ever played. Do you want to start off, Yaz?
Do you want me to start? Or will
Yeah,
it,
go for it.
yeah, let's start right at the back of the timeline. Let's
Yeah,
start with the Jurassic era, shall we?
it was the
My,
very
my, my,
first one, wasn't it? Pong was the
yeah,
very first video game, right?
thank you yeah,
Yeah,
thank you.
I did my
Yeah,
research.
I'm impressed. I'll kick back and relax and you carry on.
Oh, no, no, you start. Go on. I'll let you.
Yeah, my first game was the first game of Pong way back in 1987. No, 77. There we go. That's one. Only 3 decades back.
Man, I wasn't even a
Uh,
fetus.
I, I, you weren't ever a fetus. You were born in a test tube in a laboratory somewhere.
Shh,
You
they're
just,
not meant to know that.
oh, my bad. No, a proper fetus. Yeah, shaping everything she was.
Yeah.
Yeah. 1977, there was an arcade machine called Pong, and it was like a year or two later, I think it was, Atari thought it was so catchy, and so many people used it that loved it, that Atari created the sort of home version. And Pong, for those of you who don't know what Pong is, consists of two lines and a dot.
Yeah.
Um, you imagine sort of table tennis on a calculator, and you're in my era. Yeah.
And they've had loads of different like inspirations as well. Like, have you seen that game where it's kind of
What
it's
inspiration can you
rotated?
get for two lines and a dot?
Well, there's this one where you have like, oh my god, sorry, aeroplane right now.
Yeah.
Pause for the aeroplane. Anyway, there's this game that it's basically a bit like Pong in the fact that it has like a bar at the bottom going along, and you have a ball, and you have to hit it up and get rid of the blocks. It's kind of a
Yes.
similar thing, so it's kind of inspired whatever, I can't remember the game, but it
Yes.
inspired that. So
One thing they didn't think to do was patent the plan, the concept, the theory. So anybody and everybody, and even their dogs, could like, re-release their own version, modify it, tweak it, do what they wanted with it. So within about 3 years of finding out how popular it was, we ended up with about 10 bazillion different variants of it.
yeah,
Everything from the cartoony to the horror to the everything. Just yeah, it was just a bazillion different sort of variants of this game, and some of them released in one console as well as one cartridge in later years, sort of early 80s, when game consoles were going out. They had the cartridge with about 5 or 6 different variants of the original Pong that made gaming popular in the first place. All of one, it's just like Pong, or Pong the other Pong, or Pong, or you can play Pong 2, or Pong the Revenge of Pong, or
oh my god, it sounds like a Star Wars sequel. Revenge of the Pong. Oh, Revenge of the
Star
Pong.
Wars, but where Darth breathes differently.
Get ponged.
But
Oh.
yeah, when Pong first came out as an arcade game, they sold something crazy like 2,500 arcade machines to pubs
Wow.
and arcade rooms and that within the first year or so. And these Pong arcade machines were bringing in quadruple the money that the other arcade games were in his place. It's 4 times more. That's how popular Pong was.
That is crazy, isn't
Uh,
it? And you think
yes.
now that small amount of number for arcade games compared to how many, I don't know, consoles are sold every year, which have all these games on and not just the one game. Like
Yes.
you think it in that way, you think that is a lot of
That's a
giblets, you
lot of
know?
yeah, that's a lot of giblets. It's a lot of giblets. It's a lot of growth. It's a lot
Try
of
not to
boom.
swear,
It's a
it's
lot of
really hard.
yeah. Yeah. From now on, if she says giblets, what she
Hmm.
means is
Naughty words.
oh my. So yeah, Pong was the foundation. People were so impressed with these two lines in a dot that they just it just started to boom. That the entire none of this might have Tomb Raider might not have existed if it weren't for Pong.
My
Twitch
God.
might not have existed if it weren't for Pong. And there's a lot of people, even back then, the experts were saying it will never take off, and all the way into the 80s, experts and whatever, sort of people who sort of predict the growth of industries in the future were saying that gaming will never pick up, it will never take off, it will never, it will never be a thing. It's a fad. It will wear off. It's like the fidget spinner. It will be gone. People will forget about it by this time next year. And it's one of the biggest industries. It's only, it's only really matched by one other industry that I won't talk about today.
Okay. But yeah. Well, personally, I've never actually played Pong, but I've played, like, not the original at least. I've played the, like, different versions of what was based on Pong.
Yeah, well, the original back in the late 70s, it came with its own console unit. It wasn't a game that you put into an existing console because Pong was the first home game. It was released on a home computer. It was a box consisting of 2 dials for the left player and the right player, and you'd plug that into your television. That was the first variant of it. So if you wanted to play Pong, I think that box sold back then for about £200 or thereabouts, which back in the 70s, that would be an equivalent of about £600 today, something like that. So yes, somewhere around PS5 cost, it would cost you to take home this box with 2 dials on it and play Pong.
It probably still would be that now because of the rarity of them.
Yes. It was only when the Atari released their version of it, on the cartridge for their Atari machine. They had the Atari 2600, I think it was the first affordable home console from Atari. And they had Pong on a cartridge for that. Otherwise, before that, in the late 70s, you'd be going out and buying a £200 unit just to play Pong that couldn't play anything else.
Oh. Yeah, that would suck. Can you imagine now, right? If you bought, I don't know, a PlayStation and the only game you could play was some random game, you didn't get to choose it, and that was the only game. Like, you would get so bored with it within like a week, surely. I mean,
well, people went out to buy Pong. This box was Pong. It was Pong. It wasn't just a game. It was a console. It was Pong.
Yeah.
It's a bit like going out and buying a snooker table or something. It's a snooker table. You know what you're going to get. You go out to buy that thing for that reason. So it wasn't so much you're going to buy a console, you're stuck only playing one game for it. People went out to buy Pong.
To buy Pong, yeah.
£200, they get the Pong, they plug it into the TV, they play Pong.
Ping pong.
That's how it went. So it wasn't like a luck of the draw. I bought this console for £500 and all I can play is this. They went out to buy it.
So what did you like about Pong? I mean, there's only, it just goes back and forward, but...
Yeah, compared to other games, it was quite unique. There weren't any others.
Yeah, I guess.
It's not like I picked it and chose it over the other variants that were on the market.
There's so many choices.
I thought instead of continuing my entertainment in whacking a potato with a stick, because that's the only other option I had back then, I think there was something about the simplicity, though. You could play it with other people. You really couldn't play it alone. It was a 2-player game. They did have a artificial intelligent version of it. I don't think the original Pong, the box itself, I can't remember. I did have it, but I can't remember that far back as to whether it had artificial intelligence or if it had to be played by 2 players. But when I had the... Yeah, it was just a box with 2 dials on it. You twist it clockwise, the bat went up. You click it anti-clockwise, the bat went down. And that was it.
Wow.
But yes, that was your lot.
The first ever couch co-op game.
Yeah.
Basically.
The first ever game was also the first ever couch co-op game.
Yeah.
Yeah, except you couldn't really sit on a couch because the box wouldn't sit on your lap. It had to be on the floor or on the table or something.
You can get some cushions, I guess, and just sit on them.
You're good. A cushion table. I like the sound of that. Good word. Yeah. I totally forgot what I was saying. Yeah, but it was a really simple, easy, fun game. It was competitive, but while you're talking to somebody, you could just you'd be doing it with someone. So it's still valid to this day because the couch co-op pretty much doesn't exist anymore, and even way back then, it was just I'm rambling now.
That's fine.
I'm just rambling.
That's fine.
But yeah, I enjoyed it because it was simple and it was fun. You know, you
It
didn't
was
have
probably
to.
as well because it was the only thing unique and totally different. It was kind of like completely like spontaneous in a way,
Yeah, and
you
you
know?
didn't have to search the internet for 15 hours to work out how to get past a certain point or how the controls worked or anything like that. You just had a dial, you twist it, it went up, twist it the other way, it went down. It was simple. You
I
could
bet
play
there's
it for a
still
little.
strategy guides for Pong. I bet out there somewhere there's probably a strategy guide how to
Yeah,
get good at Pong.
it's just a blank page with the words hit the dot.
Yeah, hit the dot. Get good. Get good at it. Oh.
But on the Atari version, you did have artificial intelligence. You could just do it with one player, and it had sort of three difficulty modes. There was easy, normal, and hard, which I renamed pointless, normal, and hell.
Oh no, was it really that
The,
bad?
the gradient was insane. On easy, you could easily get like 300 points in a few minutes because it almost never ever hit the dot, ever.
Oh.
And then normal was okay. It had your moments. You know, sometimes it would spike and get really good, and sometimes it would get really bad. It wasn't consistent. It was almost like it changed between easy and hard every now and then, and just, you know, it was weird. But the hard one was impossible. I can remember sitting there for 20 minutes, twisting this little, trying to hit this just 20 minutes, and oh, it just, yeah, it was awful. It never missed a ball once, ever. It never did. Never. Never. On hard, you just never win. You never do. You never, ever. Never. It was the most advanced technology. I'm pretty sure it made NASA jealous. The AI was that good at catching the dot.
Yeah, AI's in games anyway. We'll get onto that another time.
Yeah.
AI's in games, but
If we ever survive past podcast one.
yeah. Yeah, that is very true. So, my first ever game was actually Super Frog, not Frogger. Everyone confuses it. It's not the same game. Super Frog was on the Omega. It had a wibble stick, also known as a joystick. And the game I played was actually in color.
Yes.
And if I remember correctly, it either came out in 1993 or 1994. But it was around that time that I played it, so I was 3 or 4 when I played this game. Oh, I forgot to ask you, how old was you when you played Pong?
I was about 6.
Yeah.
I'm still stunned by the fact that you said, and the game I played was in color. It was 1993. Color had been around for a decade in computer games. The ZX Spectrum, released in 1983, had color. It had 16 of them, to be precise. You're not
I
that
know,
old.
I know,
Do not
but what I'm
act
saying,
do not act like you got wrinkles already, girl.
you don't know
Do not
that.
act like you got wrinkles.
You don't know that. But I was just pointing it out because obviously I don't have a massive knowledge about Omega games. Some of them I think were in black and white. But yeah, Super Frog for me was my first ever one, and I used to love it. I was really bad at it, but I loved it. But there was one particular level, and I always remember it, but every time I look back on gameplay, I can never find it. Did you ever play Super Frog?
I never played it, no, but I know it was created. You're right, it was released in 1993 by Team 17.
Team
The
17.
same Team 17, UK-based developer responsible for the entire Worms franchise. And I absolutely loved Worms way back in the day.
Yeah.
And yeah, Super Frog was popular enough to be ported onto a PC just a year later as a DOS program. And I think it was 1997, maybe, it was re-released and ported into a sort of compatible with Windows version, which is still out there somewhere on the internet. I don't know if
It's
it's been
also on
abandoned or if
PS3 now as well. They remastered it for PS3.
they remastered it for the PS3. That's something I didn't know.
Yeah, because I played it recently.
Nice.
And it's great, but the only thing that really bugs me is I don't know if you ever saw the intro. Oh my god, the intro is amazing. it's like a little cartoon, and they didn't remaster the intro, and it's such a shame because it had so much kind of just humor, and like he's like a prince that turns into a frog. His princess gets taken away by a witch, basically. And he drinks Lucozade to get powers. And throughout the game, you have to find Lucozade bottles to gain the power, right? So, obviously, it was sponsored by Lucozade.
Clearly, no product placement here, guys.
No,
Nothing to
no,
see
but,
here.
you know. But it was just, I don't know, I just enjoyed it. It was obviously like the side-scroller type game. And this one level, I always remember it, is Snakes and Ladders. It was in like some castle, but whenever I look back on gameplay on YouTube, I can't find it anywhere. So if anybody has played that level, please comment, because I don't know if I'm going crazy at this point, because I've tried to research it and I don't know anymore.
Wow.
But even the soundtrack, I loved the soundtrack to that as well. And I just thought the whole game it was just fun. I don't think I could play it now without feeling like I would rage. It's one of those games. But
See, I really feel ripped off now. Not only did your first game have colour, it had soundtrack.
Oh yeah, Pong just had the blip, 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 blip.
Yeah, the arcade version had a sort of a electronic sound that sounded a bit like a boo and a hiss. So if certain players won, it would boo or hiss. It didn't sound like a boo; it was more like a or a.
Oh god, I can imagine.
But yeah, that was it. Just a
Oh.
Table tennis in the 70s, guys. Those were the days. But yeah, Super Frog was entirely developed and released inside of 1993 by Team 17. The entire thing was planned, developed, and released within 1 year.
I mean,
you imagine
it's
that
crazy,
happening these
isn't it?
days.
Oh gosh,
That's
you're looking at like
insane.
7-year window for some games, aren't you? Like, how long was Pong then? Pong must have been even maybe about the same.
Yeah, well, it was ported from the arcade version pretty quickly, but the Pong, I think Pong itself was developed over a period of about a year and a half, 2 years. It was one guy who was set a task of showing what computer technology can do, and his original design for Pong consisted of a television set he'd picked up for about £75 and sort of installed inside a wooden cabinet. And that's how the arcade sort of design was produced for Pong. And yeah, and he didn't even know how to use the components to make the audio sounds, the buzzing, the hissing, the beeping, that kind of thing. He wasn't even sure how to do that. But his team was like, no, we want you to create something like that. We want you to create something that has audio sound. So yeah, it was a challenge for him, but he pulled it off. And then everybody was like, we love it. We're going to use it. We like this. And then Atari was like, mine?
Yeah, mine? But, like, without that game, like you were saying earlier, you wouldn't have all the games now, and, they wouldn't have probably had this possibility of, AI and things like that.
Yeah, artificial intelligence.
I mean, really, Super Frog was only how many years after? It's not really that many years, if you think about it. And
yeah,
look how
1993 from 77, what's that, 16 years?
It's not that long, really, if you think about it. And look
No,
how
you couldn't
the
even
difference
boil an egg
between
in that time, could you?
Well, have you seen these eggs over here? I mean...
What eggs do you get?
Product placement, sorry.
Just sat there with a frying pan trying to cook an Easter egg.
But you know what I mean, like...
Yeah.
I mean, you think from, like... We'll talk about this again, like, in the future, about how quickly things progress, but between Pong and Super Frog... Games. I remember my dad, when I was younger, he played something else on the Amiga called Eye of the Beholder. And if anyone else has seen that game, it's like super, super pixely. It was also in colour. I think it had a soundtrack, if I remember rightly. And it used to scare the life out of me. Again, it was around the same time that I played Super Frog, so I would have been about 3 or 4. But yeah, that's my experience with Super Frog.
Eye of the Beholder. I think they had a very similar setup to the original sort of Might and Magic kind of thing. It had a sort of
Yeah.
a 2D picture. It had a 3D maze that was on a 2D sort of picture. You'd sort of click and it would take a step from one, sort of tile to the next kind of thing. And on the right hand side, you had the four characters, your
Yeah.
team. You had sort of your warrior, your mage, your defender, and whatever else it was. I do remember that existing.
It was
Very
like the
similar sort of
original
setup.
D&D, wasn't it? Kind of like
It
computer
was,
game.
yeah.
That's basically what it was. Um, I'd love to pick up that game again, actually, just to see how it is after not seeing it for all that time. A bit like what I did with Super Frog. I didn't play it for years and years, and I played it on PS3.
Have you got the platform Galaxy of Games? Because they
Yeah.
have a lot of the old ones on Galaxy of Games, one of which I think is the Beholder trilogy.
Oh, I'll look at that.
They have many of the old classic games that are all fully functional in this day and age. I've got hold
Nice.
of sort of a lot of 90s games, gangsters, that kind of thing, the 90s, early 2000 games on there. And they're really affordable too. It's sort of £2, £3, £4 here or there. And it's, Galaxy of Games. They've got a website and they've got a platform, a bit like Steam. You
Not
download it,
sponsored.
install it. Totally not sponsored. No, I just absolutely love it because they do pick up all of the, all the games, all of the franchises, all of the names
Yeah.
that other companies just sort of drop and aren't interested in. They pick them up and they run with them, and I love it. I love it. Check it out. Galaxy of Games. GOG.
Galaxy Games, GOG. So I actually asked some people on Twitter and Discord to see what their ones are, and I got one here from Necrosis, whose first words were I think it was
Is that the
Street
machine gun from
Fighter
the Flight
2.
Simulator?
He says, oh sorry. I think it was Street Fighter 2 on the N64. Not sure if it's the earliest I can remember. Haha. I just like the fact I could beat my brother up and not get in trouble. I think that's brilliant.
Street Fighter 2. I remember playing the Street Fighter 2 on the PC. I think I originally had a DOS version of it. But I absolutely loved that game. I was hooked on it for a long, long time. There's an interesting thing about Street Fighter 2 was that the combo system, the whole combo fighting, combo attack system was sort of, it happened by mistake. While they were doing a bug check in the car bonus stage, where you have to trash the car as quickly as possible, they noticed that during the punch time, it was possible to add a second hit and even a third, somewhere in the animation loop. And they thought it was something impossible to make useful in the game, and they couldn't really get rid of it because the timing balance was so hard to catch. So they left it in as a hidden feature, and it actually became the base for all future titles. This whole combo attack system became the base of future titles because of that bug. That's something I absolutely love about Street Fighter 2.
Wow, I never got to play Street Fighter 2. It wasn't my type of game, but I appreciate it.
Yeah, it was. I think it was. When it was first released, within the first 3 years, it was played by over 25 million people in the US alone. It was one of the most popular arcade games in the world.
Wow.
And I sunk in way too many pennies in the arcades. Every time my parents used to take me to the seaside, I'd be straight into the arcade, with my 10p's and my 20p's and the occasional 50p, and I'd be shoving them in there playing Street Fighter 2. I'd be straight in there. I never won. I never ever won. I could get past the first 2 or 3 rounds, but then all of a sudden the difficulty just rocketed. And they were like, put more money in, more money, give me all your money.
Maybe they made it harder for that purpose, to take all your money. Like, money.
They did. Yeah. The first 2 or 3 would be really, really easy to make you think you stood a chance of getting the rest of the way. And then all of a sudden you'd start losing. You'd be like, oh, fluke, put another 50 in.
Yeah.
You do it again. Well, that was a fluke at all. £25 later, you're like, this might not be as easy as I thought.
We've got another one actually from the Boxing Dutch Hound. It says, my first video game was probably Spyro. I mean, the first game I personally bought. I had always been the little brother and just had to play whatever my brother decided. Don't get me wrong, my brother picked some good games, but nothing felt as good to play as Spyro. Saw the ads on the TV, started saving up all the spare change and allowance I could get my hands on. I gave the money to my brother, who I trusted not to steal it from me, and he went to the store and got it for me. Luckily, he did the honourable thing and got me the game. I was so excited to put the game in the PlayStation and played it for hours. The colours, to my young mind, were so bright, the sounds, the music to each world were fused into my brain. Even to this day, I hear them taunting na 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 of the eggs, the egg thieves, as I chase them, and the glimmer of gems that are out of sight. Also, the fact that you weren't alone had a little companion, Sparks. It was your job to keep him happy, strong, and glowing. His gold colour by feeding him butterflies that you got by roasting sheep as they char up. But most shocking thing in the game is when I found out the scared Norks in Peacekeeper's homeworld could drop pants and moony you. Me and my brother would laugh our butts off for the longest time. So I used to love Spyro. That was one of my first PlayStation games, and not to get into it now, but like the whole PlayStation versus Xbox, I've always been a PlayStation kind of nerd, and that was one that kind of really stood out for me when I was younger. I loved Spyro, so I got to agree with Boxing on that. I loved all of Spyro, and when they remastered it, I was like, oh yes. I know you get a thing about remastering. We'll talk about that another time. But that was one game that they remastered really well.
Smooth.
Did you ever play Spyro?
I never played Spyro. I played Crash Bandicoot, which is very, very similar. But there's something I loved about Spyro was the fact that it had crossover appearances in the Crash Bandicoot series time and time again. It was a Crash Nitro Kart. It was in a Crash Twin Sanity, and elements from the Spyro series were even used in the Crash Team Racing Nitro Fueled as part of a post-launch game update. That was just a couple of years ago, actually. But the thing that interests me about Spyro the Dragon series, it sold over 20 million units worldwide but way back in 2007, which for the time was on par with Diablo 3, Gary's Mod. In fact, it just sold more than Gary's Mod, and somewhere by 2007, somewhere around 6 million copies more than World of Warcraft did.
Wow.
That's a lot of sales.
That is a lot of sales.
That's a lot of popularity.
I know you probably haven't played the new Crash, and I haven't finished it, but in the first level, there's like a little Easter egg of Spyro in it, and I'm like, oh, they're still doing it. They're still putting the little Spyro Easter eggs in Crash Bandicoot, and I love it. I just love it. But honestly, it's definitely recommend. Definitely recommend. The
first one on the PlayStation 1. That was the last time I played Crash Bandicoot.
Yeah, wow. I don't blame you. It's such a hard game.
Yeah, we'll go with hard. We'll go with hard.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so another one I have from my Discord server from Ryder Oz was Dragon Warrior 3, also known as Dragon Quest 3 on the NES. He put, I like the graphics and story. It was one that introduced him to RPGs. I adore them ever since. It's also one of those games that made me study English even more, to the point I carry a dictionary on me to check some difficult words I saw in the game, and that was 5. I was like 5 years old back then. So Ryder is actually from the Philippines. So he learned English through that game, which I think is amazing.
That is pretty amazing. Actually, yeah, it's amazing that he mentions the whole sort of, using it to educate and translate, that kind of thing, because Dragon Quest 3, Dragon Warrior 3, it sold over 1 million copies on the first day of release, but it was almost so responsible for, I'd say it was responsible. I'm not quite sure the game was responsible, but there were almost 300 arrests on its day of release.
Wait, what?
for students bunking, skiving, taunting school to buy that game.
Oh, but come on, when you were young, didn't you ever get tempted to do stuff like that?
Nearly 300. Did I do stuff? I spent more time.
Everyone was, right? Everyone was so tempted to do that.
My last attendance record at school, my last year was 37%. But yeah, nearly 300 arrests on day one of release of Dragon Warrior for children skipping school to go and pick up the game.
That's
through.
crazy.
That's pretty insane. So the fact that somebody was actually using this game as to educate on sort of English language or something like that is quite fascinating. It served an
Yeah.
educational purpose, even though people were skiving off of school to go and get it.
I gotta say, that game is actually on one of my lists to play as a massive RPG player and lover. I really want to play it, go through some more Dragon Quest because I haven't played enough Dragon Quest. That's just completely honest. I haven't played many. I've only played the newer one, so it would be nice to play that at some point. Right, I've got some more. One from
Nice.
Simple Stormy, good old Stormy, with Super Mario Bros. On the NES, and he said it was the only game he had at 5 years old.
Oh,
So that's kind of fair, right?
it could have been worse. It could have been Pong.
What do you want about? But I've actually played the original Super Mario. My friend actually, we used to have like girly sleepovers and stuff, and when you think of girly sleepovers, people think of smashing each other around the head with pillows. No, we had Mario Party. Basically, we had a Super Mario Bros. Pajama party where we take turns and see how far we get in the game and then die.
Nice.
I wasn't very good, but I did enjoy it. But yeah, Super Mario's is always going to be one of those games that is going to be forever popular, I think.
I think it's got quite a few milestones, got quite a bit of credit to its name. It's been one of the best selling games of all time. It's over 40 million physical copies of it sold.
Ooh.
And it's been credited alongside the Nintendo Entertainment System, the NES. It's been sort of credited as one of the key factors in reviving the video game industry after the 1983 crash. And it's helped to popularize the whole side-scrolling platform genre. Before then, the side-scrolling stuff wasn't too popular, and Super
Yeah.
Mario Brothers changed that.
But even
Smooth.
now, they've kind of kept up with the times, haven't they? They did Luigi's Mansion, brought it into more 3D, and they did all those types of games, didn't they? And brought it they kind of grew up with the times as well, but also like revived the old style as well, if that makes sense. So they did a bit of both, which I thought was quite cool.
Yeah, they've dabbled with a lot of different styles. I like that. A lot of companies aren't are afraid to sort of step out of their comfort zone, but Super Mario Brothers gave it a go.
Yeah, and they got Super Smash, which
Oh
the,
yeah,
they got that as well alongside other things that they have. So
yeah, yeah.
ha ha ha. Okay, I'm gonna like this one because you know what I'm like with RPGs. Ashram54 says the first game he played was Final Fantasy on the NES. All the flashy colours, but he was only 3 at the time, so I'm guessing he was kind of just staring at the screen like, colours. But I have played the first Final Fantasy, but it wasn't on the NES. It was actually on, I think it was remastered or ported over to the PSP, and I did enjoy the game. It just didn't have, I don't know, it was good. It was a good kind of start to the series, but at the time they wrote Final Fantasy, and again we'll go into Final Fantasy further down the line because I know how much we're going to disagree on Final Fantasy. But they didn't have as many plots and things in the original one, and it actually pulled them. Funny fact, the Final Fantasy franchise at the time, the first ever game, they made as their last ever game, and it was so popular it pulled them back out of any debt and any trouble they were in and rebooted the whole company.
Yeah, it was a Square, wasn't it?
It was originally Squaresoft, I think.
It was originally SquareSoft. And yeah, they were really struggling. You're absolutely right. And yeah, and Final Fantasy, it was supposed to be the last game before they end up closing down, and ended up becoming so popular as their flagship franchise for the rest of eternity,
Yeah.
pretty much.
And there will never be a Final Fantasy.
And it was originally released just 10 years after Pong, 1987 in Japan.
Yeah.
Came to the UK and the US about 3 years later. Just 10 years later, they'd evolved that much into Final Fantasy. And it's fascinating.
It is very fascinating. Yeah. Very.
But it was inspired by Dragon Quest. It was inspired by The Legend of Zelda and the Ultima series from Origin.
Yeah. I think
All three of
Dragon's
those
Quest is
games.
also made by Squaresoft as well. So I think because now I don't know. Well, I don't know if you know this, but now Dragon Quest is owned by Square Enix, which I
Yeah,
presume they were the same company then, and they just kind of they
I
take
think
inspiration.
I don't know. I think there were different companies that merged at some point. Dragon Quest was by Enix, and Final Fantasy was Square. And I'm assuming at some point there was some kind of merger or buyout or something. They became Square Enix.
Ah, makes sense. But
I
yeah, you
think.
see that in like I've played the recent Dragon Quest. I think it's 11. I think that's what it is. Um, the newest one with the hero, and you can see massive similarities between Final Fantasy and Dragon Quest. And when I think about the first Final Fantasy and playing it, you see how similar Dragon Quest is to it
Yes.
massively.
Yes.
Just the first game alone.
Oh yes.
So yeah, makes sense. Makes sense. I've got two more. Um,
Nice.
one of them's from Misa Bunny. Her first game was GoldenEye um, 007 on Nintendo 64. And she said it was the
Ooh.
first time her brother or her dad played anything on the console. So she loves it. And she just put, now it's nostalgic. Which, that's a good reason why you like it. It's a bit like how I like Super Frog. It's nostalgic for me.
Yeah, that's an interesting. That's an interesting one. GoldenEye. Imagine that being a first game.
It was meant to be a
GoldenEye.
really good game as well, wasn't it? Like back when it came out.
It was. It was the first game. We'd already had the sort of almost 2D style 3D games like Doom and that kind of thing. They were already around, but GoldenEye 007 was the first one to sort of make it more realistic, three-dimensional kind of look. And
Mm.
it proved to the gaming industry that there was room on consoles for first-person shooters, because before it was all just sort of PC first-person stuff. A console always used to be a sort of top-down Diablo-style thing.
Yeah.
But GoldenEye 007's popularity, convinced people that it's okay to produce first-person shooters on console and to make them more realistic and step away from that sort of Doom and Might and Magic and that kind of style game. So yeah,
Mm.
as it was a pivot point.
I think as well, if I read correctly, and I haven't done like loads of research into this, but I think that was one of the first actual games that was a multiplayer. Not to the point where you could join someone like we do on that now online, but there was a way you could play it with other people as well. So, like that was, I think it was that game.
I'm not
Yaza, you may know.
sure. That's not one I remember. No, I do remember there was a 007 game that was multiplayer,
Mm,
but I didn't know it was that one specifically, and I didn't know it
I think
was
it is
a.
GoldenEye. Someone let me know.
Oh, my memory is failing me. I have not had enough coffee for this.
Too late. Now the last one. Um, this is Kirby. The first ever game they played was Tomb Raider,
Oh my!
PlayStation 1, and the first game his cousin ever gave to him. And I totally agree with this one. I'm totally on board, as you can probably tell.
Uh, yeah.
As one of my favorite games, I won't talk about it too much. I'm gonna let you take over.
Me?
Yeah,
I,
because if I
I,
start talking about it, I'm not gonna stop.
what makes you think I know anything about it? What makes you think
I
I
don't know.
even know
You
what
know
Tomb Raider
stuff.
is?
You smart.
I'm smart.
You smart.
As Tomb Raider, all I really know about Tomb Raider is that it was released in 1996 on PC,
Mm-hmm.
PlayStation, and the Sega Saturn. It was pretty much simultaneously.
Yes.
And I remember at one point there was supposed to be a trilogy, the Angel of Darkness being the first one in the trilogy. And the
Mm-hmm.
sequel was supposed to be the Lost Dominion, and the Lost Dominion was going through development, but the Angel of Darkness got some really, really bad negative feedback, and they ended up scrapping the entire
Yeah.
trilogy because of that.
Yeah.
That's
Um,
that's pretty much all I remember about Tomb Raider.
Well, the first Tomb Raider, yes, originally they actually, it wasn't actually Lara in the original development stages. It was actually going to be a guy, but they thought that it would be ripping off basically Indiana Jones. So they changed it to a woman, gave us some polygons, um, and yeah, it was made by I think like 8 people, maybe a bit more than that. I think it was made by like 10 people together with the soundtrack. I mean, um, and yeah, they kind of went from that. They didn't realize how popular it was going to be, and then when it was, they kind of carried on. They carried on with two, carried on with three. Unfortunately, carried on with four. Personal opinion. Went on to five, and then I don't know if anyone's played this, but in Tomb Raider 4, they kill her off basically. They kill her right off, and in
We
five,
don't do spoiler alerts, people. We don't do spoiler alerts.
oh no. But
Take it.
well, it's such an old game. I'm sure everyone knows this by now. It's not like I'm spoiling a new game, is it? Quite honestly, but that's why Chronicles was made as a kind of. To me, Chronicles is a bit like, you know, have you ever heard of like the Tomb Raider level editors?
Yes.
It's basically, for me, that game seems like loads of those have just been put together and formed a game, because every one of them's different. There's like 3 or 4 levels in like one area, but they're different area like all together. They're all completely different stories. And then they made AOD, which I still haven't completed. And within the first 5 minutes, when I got it on PS2, the first 5 minutes, I just was like, I'm not playing this. I just turned it off. I was like, no, I'm not playing this. This is awful. I cannot do this with these controls. So that kind of made me lose all faith in future releases. And then when they released Anniversary, which was the remake of the first Tomb Raider, it got a little bit hyped up again. So yeah, I do have this massive love for Tomb Raider. I may be a bit biased. So
Smooth.
So, yeah.
There's a really, really wide variety of games there all together. Spyro, Street Fighter 2, Dragon Warrior or Dragon Quest 3, GoldenEye 007, Final Fantasy, Super Mario Brothers, Tomb Raider, Super Frog, and Pong.
Yeah.
It's just all of them have their own milestone and their own, sort of brand, their own story.
They're all very unique as well, aren't they? All of them
Yeah.
individually.
Yeah, they're all pretty unique, and they've all changed the face of gaming in some way or another.
Yeah, I totally agree.
It's just a complete collection of some of the greatest games of all time, all in one podcast in 1 hour.
Not all of them.
Not all of them. No, not all of them. Yeah, no. Tomb Raider could probably be left out of the list. You're right. Yeah.
No, I think personally, I think Tomb Raider did so much, and I could go on to it. We could have a whole podcast about Tomb Raider. I need to get a Tomb Raider fan in here to help me out on this. We could literally have a whole thing on Tomb Raider. But personally, I feel like at the time in the 90s, like I don't know, I'm not a feminist or I don't, anything like that. But because the woman who played it was so strong in her, her performance and stuff, it really put that female kind of influence game thing on the map, if that doesn't make sense.
Yeah, no, definitely. I imagine it definitely inspired a lot of young women to be confident in themselves, to be strong, to sort of pursue their goals, their dreams, their targets, that kind of thing. It definitely was a turning point. For that exact reason. Just the fact that it had a female protagonist as the starring role in itself was like a milestone, like a landmark, and that's definitely something to be proud of. That's something that a lot of people didn't have the guts to do back then.
No, and I think that's why they thought it wouldn't do so well, because originally, like I said, they intended the main character to be a man, because they were scared it would be too much like Indiana Jones. They changed it to a woman. And I think they didn't realise how well it was going to do, not realising that the male population would really enjoy a female protagonist. And they didn't realize that actually females who wanted to play the game also enjoyed that, because it was showing more variety in games.
Yeah,
So,
it's also surprising how often in the gaming world it's mistakes and unintended things that become the main features of things. Like I said, they changed the gender because they didn't want, potentially, I don't know for sure, but it might have been sort of likeness infringement or something sort of thing going on if they kept the male figure. But there was also the multi attack, the multi combo attack in Street Fighter 2 that was sort of ended up by mistake. And I think one of the other ones was Space Invaders, wasn't it? Space Invaders.
I have read about this.
Yeah, Space Invaders only had one difficulty, just one level, just one thing, and the space aliens were supposed to just keep moving in a constant, coming towards you kind of thing, going back and forth. But over time, there was an error in the script that meant it kept getting faster and faster and harder and more difficult to shoot, and that was a script error. Which they ended up keeping in as a difficulty level instead, and that was one of the first official difficulty barriers that games ever had. There wasn't really a difficulty setting before then. It just got harder. No, I remember that, yeah, because they had something like 30 aliens on the screen at one time, which was really difficult for the RAM and the processor to deal with back then. And as you kept shooting them, there were less and less of them. They'd get faster and faster because it would write them in quicker.
Oh.
That's where it was. I'm remembering now. Decaf Yazza in the house. Yeah, because it started off with so many, and the computers couldn't write them in that quickly back then. Couldn't draw them in. So as you kept shooting them and they kept getting eliminated, it had less and less of them to draw in. So they started getting faster and faster. It was an unintended side effect, but it became a thing because it got harder as we went along. It sort of decided it was a decent feature. And yeah, so it's amazing how often sort of mistakes and accidents and unintended side effects become main features of games and sort of change the face of gaming in the future.
Yeah,
it's fascinating.
All these first games, you wouldn't be any now video game wise without them, I guess.
No, indubitably. We might not have difficulty levels if it weren't for the limitations of the ZX Spectrum back in 1983.
Or because of a bug, a glitch, an error, all these things unintentionally happen. So, yeah. Cool.
The accidental punching in between punches, inspiring the entire combo thing that became the main feature of every fighting game ever for the rest of eternity.
Yeah, true. So that is it for the feedback.
Yeah, some good games there, guys. Good games. I like it.
Definitely.
Thank you for sharing them. I quite like that.
Thank you for all the feedback. We really appreciate it. This was fun. Right? You have to say yes now.
For the last 3 sentences, you've sounded so awkward, and I absolutely love it.
You have to say yes.
I'm thinking. Looking at this collection of games we've had shared with us today, I'm thinking if you want to continue with this and do another podcast next time, maybe we could focus on the evolution of games between then and now, and something like that. The evolution of computer gaming.
Yeah, so it could be like the best games in between now and then. I don't know. Yeah.
Yeah, some of the best games between now and then. Some of the things that changed the way people go. I mean, I know a lot of people out there. If we wanted to get some more stories from other people, there's always been a time somewhere where you used to love the first-person shooters, but then you discovered this game, and you ended up your entire genre of gaming changed from there. I went from first-person shooter to simulator pretty quickly after coming across certain tycoon games and stuff like that. And over the years, the games have changed. Your interest in games can change. Yeah, your tastes can change, your interest can change.
Yeah.
And not only do games evolve over time, but people's perceptions and opinions and enjoyment levels of games changes over time too, and that could be quite interesting.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Definitely.
Jolly good form, old bean.
Jolly good form.
Telly hell.
So thank you for watching this peculiar podcast.
Or listening.
Or listening. Or both.
Because I know some of you is playing Super Mario Brothers while you're listening to this. You're not watching. You're just listening.
I'm sorry we're
Smooth.
so awkward.
No, I'm cool. I'm chill. I'm just sitting here relishing in your awkwardness. I'm enjoying this.
But yeah, comment below, please. help us out. It'll be really appreciated. Oh no, we lost Jazza. He's gone. Oh, he's back. That's fine.
Yeah, don't be afraid to leave your comments below and share with us some of your favourite games. If you weren't in with the feedback from the questions that Kazi asked before, just let us know what some of your favourite games were, whether that changed over the years. Let us know what sort of podcasts, what sort of topics, what kind of themes or genres you want us to cover in the future.
Good idea.
And keep being awesome.
Yes. Goodbye.
Goodbye.